Now sharing my screen. Come here. Okay. So today, last week of CS40, finishing up our discussion of your projects. Today, if we finish everything today, which hopefully we will, then you'll have everything you need to know to totally complete the project. There's a new folder, this topic 13 folder, backend web dev 2, that has some brief notes for today. The high level idea of what we're going to be talking about today is generating a login and logout system for your web page, that when you're on Twitter or some other social media sort of website, you don't want just anybody posting messages from anybody's account. You want to enforce that it's the particular correct user doing things. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And we'll be seeing how this thing called cookies works in your web browser and with Flask, and how those are used, again, for these sorts of systems. Three high-level topics right here that we'll cover, but everything, again, is in those same references from last week. So those will be the things to, if you need more detail on one of these topics, that's what we'll cover. Okay. Before we get started, I guess, yeah, one last thing to apologize for the lab being canceled. So again, the due date for that lab, there is no due date. You just have to submit it before submitting the actual project. But all those things, part of the lab, are parts of things that you'll need to complete for your project. So you definitely want to get started on those sooner rather than later. Before we get into the technical stuff today, any questions about anything, Henry?
Will there be a place to turn in the lab?
Question is, place to turn in the lab on Sakai. There should be now one available. Yes, Jackson.
Also, in the instructions for the lab and the project in general, talks about a SQL injection attack.
Question about this idea of a SQL injection attack. The lab instructions and the project instructions talk about. That's the third last, sort of very last topic of the course that we'll be talking about.
Make sure that, because I don't want my website.
Yep, you don't want that in your website. As an aside, or as recall that you'll have one last quiz the next class period, last class period on Wednesday. And again, that quiz is going to be combining SQL with Python. And you will want to pay, so we've already covered the material for that quiz, but you'll want to pay close attention to the practice problems for that quiz, especially the ones we didn't cover in class. Make sure that you run those and understand what's going on in those practice problems, because there is some weird stuff in those practice problems that we didn't cover in class, but I still expect you to be able to do. Yes, right.
In terms of the turning in the lab, it says that you want the Firefox output of the root HTML. Is that just like our website?
Yeah, that's just exactly just the website.
Okay.
Yep. When you copy and paste that thing that that Flask gives you, the HTTP colon, whatever it is for your computer, take a screenshot of that and
Perfect.
put it
Okay.
in Sakai. Good questions. Any other questions about anything before we? Yes.
I know. Is the lab can be turned in as well, or should it just be part of the project?
There is a spot on Sakai to submit it now. So you will have to take the screenshot and submit it. The project, there is not going to be anything to submit on Sakai. You'll just come to the Zoom session or in person if you scheduled that, and demo me the project. There is a lab for this week. The lab for this week is optional. So if you complete it, then the submission for that is just also demoing over Zoom. So submitting the last week's lab will be the last thing on Sakai. All good questions. Any other questions before getting today's technical material? Okay. So then I have over here VS Code opened up, and I'm in the project folder that we were working on last week. So go ahead and get that opened up as well. Again, if for whatever reason you were not able to follow along with what we were doing in class, or just want to get an exact copy of my version of this project folder, under the topic 12 folder, there is this project folder, and I've updated it with all the changes that we've made to all these files. So it's no longer just the base version of this, it's all the changes that we've made. And again, today in class, we'll be making some changes to all of these files, and I will also upload those changes so you'll have access to them. And the whole thing is recorded, so you will be able to, if you miss something, then don't panic. You'll be able to watch the video or get it on GitHub. There's going to be a lot of stuff today, so very easy to just miss one thing. And but yes, question.
Could you remind me what the DB access and the DB create, like the difference between those and what exactly they do?
Question is about DB access and DB create. The important one is this dbcreate.py file. This dbcreate.py file is going to create the, I'll go ahead and come back here into my terminal. If on my computer, the dbcreate is in this practice quiz folder right here. And what this dbcreate.py file does is it creates the twitterclone.db file for you and populates it with the basic information. I have it in this practice quiz because all of these quiz problems are based off of this dbcreate.py file. But you'll also want to use this dbcreate.py file and the twitterclone.db that it creates as the sort of base database for your project that you're working with in this project.py file down here.
So would you call the Twitter_clone.db as the database, or would you call the create?
Good question. This file right here, this is the database. And then this file up here is the Python file that creates the database.
Okay.
Good questions. Okay, so in order to run my project again, right now I'm not in the right folder. So very first thing I'll do is I'll cd into the appropriate folder, and it'll be different for everybody. Again, exactly what that cd command based on how you've opened up your settings. But again, the ls command down here lists the files in your folder. And so you want to be in a spot where you are at the project.py file like this. And then you type Python 3 project.py, hit enter. You get this sort of output. Copy and paste that over here into Firefox, and you get the web page that we've been working on so far. Actually, real quick as well, before we get too far into this, I want to also remind us about the caveat tasks, that in order to get the any grade above an A-, an A-, or an A in this class, then you have to complete those caveat tasks, so the reading or viewing, and make your post on here. So don't forget to do that. And you just have to do this before you present on Zoom. Okay, yeah, so we have our Twitter clone website set up here. And the first thing that we're going to do for our login logout system is we're going to change the menu up here. We want to change the way our web page looks depending on whether a user is logged in or logged out. And so we're going to, before we talk about how to log a user in, we're going to talk about what happens when the user gets logged in. If I come down to this slash route, again, there's this render template. It's rendering the root.html. The root.html comes over here. and the extends base.html up here. Base.html has our actual menu inside of it. And what we're going to want to do, the first thing we're going to do today is we're going to change this menu so only certain buttons will be displayed if the user is logged in, and other buttons will be displayed if the user is logged out. So up here, the log, let's see. I'm gonna, we're gonna see some new Jinja 2 code here in order to do this. We're gonna see if statements in Jinja 2. The syntax looks like this. If, and then the name of a variable, something like if logged in. Anytime you see the curly brace inside of these HTML files, again, this is Jinja code. This curly brace and followed by a % indicates that the stuff inside of here is some sort of complex expression. We saw the block content command before. Now we're looking at this if statement. And so if the user is logged in, then it makes sense to show the log out button and the create message button, but we don't really want to show them the login button or the create user button if they're logged in. Nobody who's already logged in wants to do these two tasks right here. And then we'll have an else statement like this, and then an and if like that. So the syntax here is totally different than the syntax from Python. Python, again, is white space sensitive, so the indentation matters. Jinja 2 is not white space sensitive, so the indentation does not matter. Jinja 2 knows that this stuff right here is contained inside of these if blocks just because it's between these two lines. It doesn't care about the indentation at all. And then similarly down here, it knows that these two things are inside of this else and end if because it's just between them. It doesn't care about the indentation at all. And what's going to happen is that if this variable is set to true, if logged in is set to true, then these two things right here will be displayed. We'll get a button for creating a message, a button for logging out. And if it's set to false, then these two things will be displayed. We'll get a button for logging in and a button for creating a new user. So this is a little bit better structured menu that will be more informative to the users, not give them extra useless information that they don't need. Let's go ahead and save this up here. And again, anytime we make changes to our code, no matter what it is, it's always good practice down in your terminal to stop your program, so Control-C, and then the up arrow to rerun it, and we'll see how those changes impact the display in Firefox. I'm going to come over to Firefox now, and let's just refresh this, and we're going to pay attention up here to our menu and see how the menu changes. So let's refresh this. And now you can see that the home, login, and create user are all displayed. So it looks like a good menu for somebody who is not currently logged into your web page, and the other options are not displayed. So again, comparing this over here, these messages are not being displayed because they're inside this if statement about if logged in is true. We're currently not logged in any way, so this is not being displayed, and this is being displayed. Yes, Pedro.
On the base HTML, do you need to have two end block commands for each?
Two end block commands. So down here, the block and end block are related to this content right here. And what this is telling Jinja is that in the file that is extending base.html, so in this case, roost.html, so this is the file that is extending base.html. Inside of here, there is a separate block content, and this contains the material that's going to get copy and pasted right here. So the block is something that does not exist in Python at all, and this is like copy and paste stuff over. The if, else, and if, these are things that exist in Python, and they're unrelated to the blocks and unrelated to the extending. It would be possible if we wanted to also have other if statements inside of this root.html file. They could be inside the block or outside the block, doesn't matter. So in the base.html, end block seems kind of unnecessary that you just, but there's nothing between block and end block. But you just need to have both of them. It's just the way that Jinja works. In general, what the end block does is the stuff that's between them gets copied and pasted. This stuff right here will get copied and pasted between these two lines right here. All good questions so far. Any questions? Any other questions at this point? Yes, Raymond. So you can speak up a little bit more?
We are organized with we use that link.
If we use the link, I'm not sure what you mean.
What's the condition that is considered like off? Yeah, I just want to see like traditional meetings log out.
Why would you need to log out?
You're asking if like why we default logged in already on this one, where like how can we log out with the condition of log in?
Okay, so yeah, so as the next natural question here is that we've seen that this is causing us to only see this. How can we make things display this instead of this down here? And this is where we're going to start writing some Python code. We're going to come over to project.py, and somehow we have to pass in a variable to this Jinja template so it knows whether we're logged in or logged out. Over in project.py, this is the render template function right here that's calling root.html. And again, root.html is calling base.html right here. And what we're going to do right here is create a variable logged in that we're passing to render template and set that equal to true for now. So let's save that. We've made some changes to our Python code here. So we always come down here, Control C, ending our current program, up arrow, rerun this program. Now back over to Firefox. And up here right now, you can see that currently we're looking at the menu if somebody is not logged in. If that logged in variable is false, because we can see these are the options that you would want to do if you're not logged in. I'm going to refresh my web page now. And now you can see that those menu items have changed. So this is what should be displayed if the person is logged in. And so this variable right here, this logged in parameter that we're passing to render template, this is going to determine how the menu of our web page is displayed. And somehow we'll have to set this variable to either true or false in our Python code in order to display the right menu for our users. Question?
Good question. I know, for example, like when we return the render template to the HTML, can you put commas like messages equals messages and then another comma logged in equals true?
So you can have as many of these parameters. These are called named parameters because it has a name of something that you're putting in. You can have as many of these as you would like to have. So as part of the lab, had you do something that looked like this, creating a messages variable and passing that into to the Jinja template like this, and it's totally okay to have both of these here. Right now, I'm getting this error message right here because I haven't defined this messages variable. Let's go ahead and do it up there. Messages should be a dictionary somehow that's going to be getting displayed, or rather it was a list of dictionaries. And doesn't matter the order that these are happening in, and there'll be some situations that you'll actually need even more to pass in more than just two things to your templates in this project. Good questions. Okay, so what we're gonna be talking about in the rest of this class is how do we determine what we should pass in right here? Should it be true or should it be false? And so the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna take a pause on our root route here and start thinking about our login route and displaying a menu to the user that they're gonna use to actually log in. I'm going to come over to the login.html. And actually, before we do that, let's go back to the project.py. I'm going to change logged in to false right here. And the reason I'm doing that is so that the login route will get displayed so that we can test things a little bit more easily. So change logged in to false so that this login route gets displayed. Let's go ahead. Every time we make changes, it's good practice just to rerun things, make sure that our changes did do in fact what we expected, and they did. So here's the login button. Now I can click the login button and we get our login route down here. And we're gonna make changes to the HTML of this login route. In this login route, what we're going to need is what's called an HTML form. And this form is going to have the buttons and the text blocks that users are going to be able to type in their information. I'm going to do this inside of a table. So recalling from way back at the beginning of the course, this is the format for tables / TD input type equals text, name equals username. We'll go over all of these, what they're doing here in a second. /tr/table like this. And so we have a username here, and then this input type equals text. I'm going to go ahead and display what this looks like. Control C down here, up arrow, rerun, come back over to Firefox, refresh this page, and you can see over here there's this little menu that's being created where it says the word username right here in this little box where somebody can type in a username. In order to log in, we don't just need a username, but we also need a password. So this TR again stands for table row. So I'm going to create a new row in this table. Now TD password /TD another input type equals text, name equals password /TD. No, I'm going to type it all out, and then you can see it all. None of the changes that I'm making right now are what I would call semantic changes, just changing the formatting here, making it a little bit easier for you all to see what I've written. And one last entry in this table. This, an empty cell right here, and then input type equals submit, value equals login like this. And I'm gonna, so yeah, I'll come back to this screen here in a second so that you have a chance to see it all while I type things out. But we're gonna first go over to Firefox and just see what the final output here looks like. So Control C, up arrow, rerun, come back over to Firefox F5, and here's our little login system, login form where we have username. This will be the username right here, password, this will be the password, and a button right here that tells us to log in. Okay, so now that's all we're going to type out here. You can see what this is and get caught up with your typing, following things, and asking questions. Question?
My HTML asks me, my VS Code asks me to like submit text, username, text, password, submit, login, all this like strings with like quotes around them.
Question is, so recall in HTML that if you have, these are called attributes right here, and this is the value of that particular attribute. And in HTML, these string quotation marks here are totally optional when surrounding your values. Depending on how your VS Code is set up, it might be recommending stylistic recommendations to you. And some style guides say that you should always have quotation marks around your values. Other style guides say that you should never have quotation marks around your values. It doesn't change how Firefox will interpret the results here and display them. It doesn't change that at all. It's just 100% stylistic. The one situation where you do need to have quotation marks is if you have a space inside of your value. And so here we have login as one word, but if I wanted to make this login 2 words like that, in order for Firefox to know that this in is part of the value of this attribute, then you have to put this inside of quotation marks. And in the HTML is like Python, where the type of quotation marks doesn't matter. You can use single quotation marks or double quotation marks. So just to demonstrate that real quick, I added a space inside this word login. I'm going to save this, come down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun, back over to Firefox, F5 down here. There's now a little space in this button, log space in. Question?
Is there a way to get your CSS, like design, your style to apply not to that specific web page?
The question is there a way to make the CSS not apply to one particular page? And the answer is the way that you want to do that is you'll want to have like use the classes and the IDs. So inside of your base.html, you'll have the style tag to include the particular file inside the header. You want that file inside of everything, but then you can have custom formatting for, say, like a particular section by doing something like class equals login or something like that. Okay. So one last thing that we need to do for our form to be able to interact with Python, and that is adjust this form tag up here. There are 2 important attributes of this form tag. The first one is called action. Action tells us what web page are we going to visit when somebody presses this submit button. So right here, our action will be going to the /login route. We're currently already on the /login route, so this is going to tell us to go back to the same route. And then there is a method, and method will start off specifying that that's equal to get, like this. Uppercase, lowercase shouldn't matter here. Quotation marks, not quotation marks shouldn't matter, but VS Code automatically did that for me. So the important things that you'll need to have here in order for this to work are that this form has this action equals login, method equals get. Everything down here is basically just stylistic things, how it's getting displayed, and we'll see how that interacts inside of Python here in a second. Save that, come down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun this, coming back over to Firefox, F5, reload this web page, and I'm just going to click this login button right here, and you can see that we stay on the same web page when I do this. Again, we're staying on this same web page because the action equals /login, and up here, our route is /login. If you're paying very close attention to the URL browser up top, you can see there's now a question mark with username equals and password equals. I'm going to click on my home route, click on my home button right here, click on my login button right here, and now look at the URL. You'll notice that the URL just has the route information. It just says /login up here. But if I type in something like my username is Haxor and my password is 1337 like this, and press the login button right here, then up here in the browser URL bar up here, you can now see a question mark with username equals Haxor and password equals 1337. So currently what this, basically what this form is doing is it's basically just changing the URL to contain the information that you typed into this form. The reason it knew that username was equal to Haxor, that's why did it specify username right there, was because inside of my HTML right here, the name of this first input was username. And so whatever value I typed into there is what it displays up here, username equals Haxor. I typed Haxor right here, and so that's what it displayed up here. Similarly, up here it says password equals 1337. That's because the name of this input was password. What we're going to do next is see how do you get access to these variables up here in the menu bar. How do you get access to those from Python? Let's come back over to Python in our project.py. We're going into the /login route right now, not the root route. We're going into the login route because over here on our webpage, we're looking at the /login route up here. And we're going to just print out to the screen what the information down here is. Again, this information, these logs that Flask is printing for us are useful for debugging. They tell us all the URLs, all the web pages that the person using our web page has been visiting. And so you can see the different URLs down here. And in particular here, you can see the URL that contains these parameters right here, these arguments. And in order to get access to these arguments, there's built into our request libraries. So we have request and then .args.get like this. And actually, let me scroll up here for a second. Let's try that, save that. So we get our request object now here that we now have access to. And come down here, request.args.get of username like that. Let's create a variable called username, set it equal to that. And then let's do a print username equals comma username down here. And so our goal right here is that this right here, request.args.get is supposed to get here I typed in username. So it's supposed to get whatever comes after the equals sign over here for this username. So username equals Haxor. And so this should get set to Haxor. And then we'll print it out. And hopefully, if everything works, that will be equal to Haxor right there. Control C, every time we make changes to our code, stop it, up arrow, rerun like this. Come back over here to Firefox, F5 to refresh this. The URL up here stayed the same. We can verify inside of our Flask output down here that the URL stayed the same just by actually inspecting the URL that we got right here. And if we look up, all the output again from one of our routes happens before this log line of the route. So when we see this line, we look up to see what the output was. And right here, we can see that it has this username equals Haxor right here. If I also want to get the password, then we'll say password equals request.args.get password like that. And so print username, print password equals comma password like that. Come down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun, back over to Firefox, F5, have the Haxor and password up here, come over here, and now we can see that Haxor and password are both set like that. Good time to come up for air and see if there's any questions about what's going on. Yes. Question is, what is the point of this line right here? The answer is that this line gets the username or the password for us. In particular, whatever we put in here, inside the URL, it's going to find that particular, again, the stuff to the right of the question mark is called a query parameter. It's going to find that particular query parameter and return its value. So here, because I have username, it's finding username, and then it'll return Haxor for us right here. If I come back over to our Twitter clone, down here in this username field, I'm going to, let's do Trump and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like this. I press the login button, and I come back over to VS Code, and we can see down here that the URL that I requested now has username equals Trump and password equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so this request.args.get username, set username variable right here equal to Trump, and we print out username equals Trump, username equals Trump, password equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these two lines right here are how we actually access the information that the person submitted inside the HTML form. Yes.
Getting a request is showing up as an error.
So yeah, there's two common mistakes that can happen here. One is that you, instead of saying request, singular.args.get, you do your requests plural.args.get. This is a common mistake because we've previously used the requests plural library for downloading things. So I don't know, my fingers are just used to typing out requests plural, but this is something different. This is, now we need request singular. That's one reason for getting an error message. Another reason is that, so this request object is built into the Flask library, and the sort of traditional way of importing it is adding a comma request up here from Flask import, these other things that we've been using, and then this request right here. And so if you don't have, I didn't previously have this in our import line, and you'll have to add that in order to be able to actually use it down here. It turns out it's going to be very useful to have this sort of information, this sort of debugging information printed out all throughout on all of your routes. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a helpful debugging function for us. Define print debug info that just does something like this. Only I'm going to request.args.get username, request.args.get username. So I'm not even gonna create variables for these things. I'm just going to immediately print out what request.args.get is giving us for these two username and password. Do that here. Let's, at the very top of my login route, I'm going to add this print debug info function like that. And I'm going to add this function now to all of my routes. So no matter what route I'm working on, I'll always be able to see exactly what request.args.get is equal to for username and password. So I have that on my login route. And let's go ahead and make that the very first thing in my root route as well. Save that. Let's see. I think I have a logout route next. Let's go ahead and add that to the logout route down here as well. So save this, come down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun, over here to Firefox. Let's press the home button here, press the login button, press the home button again, just browsing the web page a little bit. And if we come down here, we can see that every time now we have this log output message printed, we also have this this debug message right here telling us what the username and password were equal to for that particular web page. Right now, you can see that these are always set to none because they're not equal to anything. If you look at all these routes, they don't have the question mark inside of them. So we're not setting those variables to anything. But if we come back over to this login route and let's do Haxor again, 1337 and log in. Now my URL contains that information. And so if I come down here, the URL contains that information and URL contains that information. So the information is being printed. Yes.
Sorry, did you put the print debug info in other?
Yeah, so I made this a function so that it would be easy to copy and paste it and put it inside of every single route. So no matter what route I'm looking at, I'll be able to see the output or the values of these particular arguments. So up here, this is what my print debug information function looked like. And I added this as the very first line to all of my different routes. That way, as I'm browsing the web page, not only do I get this output of what is the exact URL that the person visited, I also get this output about what is all this request.args.get equal to. And we're going to see two more different ways of getting information like this here in a little bit that we'll be adding also to our print debug information in order to get even more useful debugging output. Good questions. This is another good time to come up for air if there's questions about anything going on right now. Okay, so one problem though that we have with our current login form is that, so come back over here to Firefox, like my password up here is being displayed in the URL bar up here. So anybody who's just walking past my computer can just like take a discrete look around my shoulder and see exactly what my password is. That's not something that we want to have happen. So somehow we need to hide this information so that it's not visible. There's a couple of steps that we're going to do that. But the first thing is back to our HTML in this login.html, we have to change what this method is. So real quick on line 5, you can see that this method right here is equal to get. And you'll notice that in the information that's being printed out down here, all of these debug lines, all of these log lines, they start with this word get. This word get means that it's what this method is. Get is the default method for HTTP, which is what, again, HTTP is the protocol that web pages are using. In order to hide the information on this form so it's not visible in the URL, we have to change this method to post. Post like that. I'm going to save this, and we're going to go over to Firefox. We're going to verify that the information is not in the URL. Some other bad things might happen here in a second, but the important thing is that we're going to verify the information is no longer contained in the URL when we say method equals post. So down here, Control C, up arrow, run. Everything's still working. Come back over to Firefox over here. I'm going to press the home button, press the login button. No problems over here. Now that I'm on my login page, I'm going to type username equals Haxor, password 1337, and press the login button right here. And you can see up here at the top, there is no more username and password information in the URL, so that's good. But now we're getting this error method right here saying method not allowed. The method is not allowed at the requested URL. If we come back over to Firefox, or sorry, over to VS Code, we can see that this is the request that Firefox made of our web page. You can see that the request that worked for our web page was get and then /login. It had the status code of 200. Here we're getting this post /login. We're getting post right here because our method is now equal to post right here. And we're getting this 405 status code. Again, anything that starts with a 4 indicates that somehow there was an error that's going on, that what you're doing is not allowed. We have to adjust our Python code next in order to make this post method be allowed. And we do that on line 38 right here on this @out.route. Here we have our login route, and by default, there's this sort of hidden parameters right here that says methods, and the default value of this is that get is the only allowed method for the route. Again, the method, this is methods plural, but this matches the word right here, method singular, about what this form is doing. It's now using a post method, and by default, our login route is only allowed to use the get method. So in order to make this also allowed to use post, we have to say comma post like that. We do get and post, and now it's able to get, or it'll use either of these methods, either the get or the post method. Save that, come down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun, come back over to Firefox. I'm going to just come back to my main page like this, home, login, that all works. My username right here will say Haxor, password 1337, come right here and press login. And now we're not getting an error message when we do that login, and also up here in the URL, we're not seeing the password information. So we're making progress. Come back over to VS Code. Down here, I can see that it is a post method that is happening. Again, the post method means that we got the information from the form, and status code 200. But up here now we have all of our debug information. It says the request.args.get username and password is now equal to none. So these two lines right here are only working if we use the get method. In order to use the post method, we have to change what these two lines look like. And this will be a little bit, well, let's see, the way that you do that is you change this word args right here from args to form. I think this is a super confusing thing that the Flask library did, because forms can use either the get or the post method. And this form that we're using uses the post method, but it has this word get here inside of this function call right here. And there's no like, I don't know, the use of the word post is not included anywhere inside of here. But request.form.get means you're using the post method. Request.args.get means you're using the get method. Let's save this, come down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun, come back over to Firefox, press our login button, press our login button like that, username Haxor, password 1337, login like this, there we go. No error messages, our password, username still not in the URL up there, come over here, VS Code, and now, now we can see the username is Haxor, the password is 1337. We're correctly getting that information from the web page. Notice up here that request.args.get still equal to none for both username and password. One last thing to do real quick before we come up for air, I'm going to change my debug info to now print out not only the information from the get method, but also the information from the post method. So request.form.get, args.get, form.get, form.get, form.get. Maybe I'll add some comments right here. This, the get method right here. And then this is the post method. Down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun, come back over to Firefox. I'm gonna go ahead and press the refresh button on my web page and we'll see what happens. Refresh, you see you get some sort of warning message saying that in order to display this page, Firefox must send information that will repeat any action. If you've seen this information, an error message like this before, it's because your web page was using a post method. And anytime you refresh a web page that used a post method, it's going to ask you if you really want to resend that information that's not visible in the URL to the web server. I'll press resend right here. And that resent this request.form.get, username Haxor, request.form.get, password equals 1337 right here. Good time now to stop, come up for air. Any questions about what's going on? Pedro?
Yes, for me, it's not letting me initially load the login website, and it's giving me the message with the get method in red.
So if you have the get method in red, it probably means that your methods up here is containing only the word post and not get and post.
I think it is. I don't know if it has something to do with the HTML.
There is nothing that you can do to this file over here that will make something come up in red unless you have an error in your Jinja syntax, like you have an if statement but no end if statement. If you had something like this, then you would get the internal server error 500, and Python would barf out a big complaint. If Python's not barfing out a big complaint, then you know that you never have an error in the Jinja. It's no error in the HTML. The error must be in your Python somewhere. Good question. I'll have to look at it one-on-one with you. Okay. So now we have username and password information that we have access to. We have to check somehow if the user, if this username and password are actually correct. I'm gonna create a little dummy function up here that says def is I'll say, change it to R, credentials, good. And we'll pass in the username and password like this. And for your actual assignment, you'll need to actually look inside of your database here. Look inside the database and check if the password is correct for the user. And so we've been talking about how to do that the past few class sessions with using SQLite inside of Python. I don't want us to talk about that right now, though. We're just going to use a dummy thing right here and say if username is equal to Haxor and password is equal to 1337, then return true. Otherwise, if that's not the case, then return false. Anytime you have some like utility that somehow is going to interact with the database, it's always good practice to first just use a dummy thing like this in order to get your actual Python code working. And then once you are convinced that your Python code is working without accessing the database, then go ahead and add the database information. Question?
I think it might not work if it's 1773.
1337. Thank you. Yes. And then down here, we'll have a variable is login. We'll do it called good credentials equals our credentials good, username and password like that. And let's print good credentials equals comma good credentials. Save that. Come down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun. And over here, so let's click the home button, click the login button. Username, we'll do Trump 12345. Hit enter. Come back over here. Say username equals Trump, password equals 1235. Good credentials equals false because that username and password is not what we hard coded. Now I type Haxor 1337 like this. Press login. Come back over here and username Haxor, password 1337. Good credentials equals true. Any questions about this? Okay. In our render template for login.html down here, we're going to want to, if the person types in incorrect credentials, we're going to want to inform them of that somehow. So down here, we're going to say if not good credentials, so the login was bad for whatever reason, then we'll do a render template with, we'll say bad credentials equals true, like that. Else, return render template login.html with bad credentials equals false. So we'll have this little parameter right here that tells us whether the person typed in good or bad credentials here. Save that. And come over to login.html. We're going to have to take advantage of this new parameter inside of login.html. Over here, we'll have a little section at the top where we might display a little warning message. So if bad credentials, like this, and if, then we'll add a little paragraph /paragraph and say that username or password incorrect. And I'll go ahead and add some styling issues saying that color red like that. Let's say error. So if somehow this bad credentials variable gets set, then we'll say that the user, it should display this information right here, giving the user some sort of message about the credentials being set incorrectly. And we're setting that bad credentials variable down here based on this computation we did up here. Down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun, back over to Firefox. Over here, click the home button, click the login button. We start off with this error, username or password incorrect. So that's one bug that we have at this point. We don't want to display this the very first time somebody visits this web page, only after they've typed something. But let's try Haxor1337, log in. If we do type in the correct information, that goes away. If we type in incorrect information, then that message will come back. So there's one last thing for us to fix about this, that when we first visited the login page, this message here was still being displayed. Otherwise, everything was working correctly. In order to make the message not be displayed when we first visit this web page, we have to check if we somehow have to figure out, is it the first time we visited that web page? And we know it's the first time we visited the web page because username and password are none the first time we visit. The first time we visit, we have not submitted anything in the form. So these two things right here are gonna, there's nothing in this form variable. So username and password will be none the first time we visit this web page. And so if username is none, then let's just return render template with bad credentials equals false. Otherwise, so this up here, this if statement is it's the first time we visited, no form submission. This else statement right here, not the first time we visited. They submitted a form. We're on the post method. Like that. Down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun, back over here. Press the home button, press login. No error message being displayed. Username, Mike123, hit enter. That username and password is incorrect. We're now displaying an error message. Type Haxor1337, log in. No error message right here. Question?
For internal server errors, what is that indicating?
Question is about internal server errors. What's going on with that? So again, anytime on Firefox you have an internal server error, what's happened is that somehow you have a Python error. So here's a very simple Python error like this. This will give us a name error. This thing is not defined. Control C, up arrow, rerun right here. The very first time I visit my login page, it's going through that, through this if statement right here. This is the first time we visited, going through this if statement right here. We get that this name error down here, this thing is not defined. Anytime you get an internal server error inside of Firefox, then Python will be barfing out a big traceback for you, and you use your normal traceback, understanding the exceptions, skills to figure out what's wrong with that particular line. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on here, so very easy to have slightly missed something and getting internal server error because maybe a variable is not defined or there's a typo somewhere or something like that. Big picture idea again, though, is we have three cases about what our login route can do. We have a case where it's the very first time they visited, and we know we're in this case because there's no form submission. We know there's no form submission because our username or our password is equal to none. If they have submitted a form, then we know that this will be false. This if statement will be false, so we'll be down here in this else statement. And then if the credentials are are not good, then we'll pass in this bad credentials, display this error message. Otherwise, our credentials are good. They typed in a good username and password. And so we do this right here. Yes.
Go back to the login HTML really quick to go with that.
So the question is, over in project.py, we have this bad credentials equals true and equals false. And how does this connect to the HTML? So there's this if statement right here. And we have if bad credentials. Again, whatever comes after the if statement inside of Jinja 2 has to be one of the parameters that you're passing into this render template function. So here I'm passing in this bad credentials. So over in login.html, my if statement has bad credentials right here. If this is true, if bad credentials is true, there's only one situation where bad credentials should be true. It's this one right here. If that happens, then we will include this code right here in our output to Firefox. If this is false, we will not include this output. So the only thing that's going on here is that we're displaying this paragraph right here. I had attempted to change the color of the text to red. It seems that my CSS has some sort of problem with it though, so it's not changing things to red. We're getting really close to having a complete login system at this point. There's just one last thing for us to do, which, like all the things that we've been talking about, just compound on the complexity of everything else. And so again, that's like the main challenge of this assignment is that there's so much going on that, and if you miss something in just one part, it can have a sort of butterfly effect, spreading error messages out throughout your code. And so figuring out exactly where your problems are is going to be the key difficult part of this project. But one last part is now if so we have a system that can tell us if we're logged in or not, that if we get to this spot right here, if we get here, then we're logged in. They typed in the right information. The problem is if we and we'll just, in order to make that super clear, I'm going to say return login successful here. So we're not even going to use this this render template function. Coming back over here, let's we have to Control-C, up arrow, restart. Back over here, let's F5 this, refresh. Back at our login page. Here's our home page. Here's our login page. And our username equals Haxor, password 1337, like this. Login successful. In order really to know that our login is successful, we talked already about how to do that with the render template function. I'm going to scroll back up to our root route. In our root route, where did it go? Here we go. We have this logged in right here. Logged in equals false is what we put right here. And this again was controlling what's inside of our menu. So I'm going to Control-C that. Come down here and let's change our render template call right here so that logged in equals true. And all this is going to do, let me adjust it so it all fits on one line. So I just adjusted the formatting so it's all, you don't have to scroll to see what I typed in here. Logged in equals true. Again, all this is going to do is change what our menu looks like so that we know whether we're logged in or not. So back over here, going to the login route, try Trump 1 2 3 4 5, error doesn't exist, Haxor 1337, press login, pay close attention to the menu up here, login. come down here. I guess I forgot to save this, come down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun, come back over to Firefox. Cancel up here, log in. So over here, Haxor 1337, hit enter. And now you can see that the menu up here changed so that it has the menu of somebody who's currently logged in. We have the menu of somebody who's currently logged in up here. But if I come back over to my home route, if I come to my home route, that login disappears. And if I come over back to login, it also disappears. So there's no sort of memory in our system that we've at some point correctly logged in. As soon as I visit a new web page, it's going to instantly log me out. And that's not what we want to have happen. So there's one last way that we're going to see that Firefox can communicate with our Flask program in order to send information, and that's through cookies. Cookies are going to be, they're like the information that we've been getting from the forums. Cookies are like this information right here, except Firefox automatically sends it every time you visit a web page. So I'll start by just modifying our debug information up here. This is the cookies. And cookies, the way it works, I think makes a lot more sense than the post. You just replace this middle thing right here with cookies. And it'll show us what is the cookies value for username and password. So save that. How do we actually set a cookie? How do we create a cookie? Down here, when we log in, we're going to create a cookie that contains the username, password info. So the code that does this is this render template function. We're still going to have the same render template function, but I'm going to create a variable template equals that, and then return template right here. So this is exactly the same as what we had before, but now I'm going to modify this, this template variable a little bit. The first thing that I'm going to do is say template equals, we'll do response equals make response of template. And this response is going to contain the actual cookies for us. And then response dot set cookie, response dot make cookie. And then it's going to be the name of the cookie, so username, and then the value of the cookie, just username like that. And then password and password. And then my return, instead of being return template, put that up here and comment it out, I'm going to return the response like that. So these 4 lines are what I've added here, which is going to actually set the cookie for me. One second. Here we have this undefined variable make response right here. This is another one of these functions that's built into the Flask framework. And so come up here and we have to import it. So just like we imported the request variable, we'll have to import the make response variable like that. And then come back down here, no longer underlined. Save that, come down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun, come back over to Firefox right here, home, login, let's type Haxor 1337 like this, press login. Uh-oh, internal server error. What does that mean? It means that we barked out something like this. Response object has no attribute make cookie. Whoops, it is in fact called set cookie. Misread my note like that. Again, these are functions that like nobody in the world memorizes, not even the people who write the Flask framework, because it's hundreds of thousands of lines of code making this Flask framework work. So I just Googled this right before class to remember how to do this. So down here, Control C, up arrow, rerun. back over here and hit enter, come over here, Haxor space 1337, hit enter, and it shows that I'm logged in right now. If I come over here, then my cookies are set to these things right here. I'm going to come over to come over here, press F12, and I'm going to manually inside of Firefox inspect what the values of my cookies are. And there's this storage tab right here. So we've previously been using the inspector, like right click, inspect element, takes you up to a menu like this. You can also press F12 to get here. If I click on storage right here, it'll tell me exactly what the value of my password and username are right here that, that we typed in. And I'll go ahead and delete these things like that. I deleted them. If I come over to these web pages, you can see those cookies don't exist. Here under my username, type Haxor1337. Now these cookies down here exist, and they'll stay with me no matter which route I'm visiting. In order to actually now on the home route, I'm going to do this really quickly. On the home route, in order to know whether I am logged in correctly or not, the root route, here we go. I'm going to, so here, check if logged in correctly. I'll say that the username equals request.cookies.get username, and the password equals request.cookies.get password, like that. So here's my username and password stored in those cookies. Have it good credentials equals our credentials good, username, password. So again, this is eventually going to be doing a database call. We haven't implemented that right now. So it's just checking if username is username, password is Haxor. And now this good credentials right now, that's what I'm going to pass in right here as logged in. Good credentials, like that. So this will be true if my username and password satisfy this function. Otherwise, it'll be false. Come back over to Firefox. Let's go ahead and start with an empty slate here. Delete those things on the home route. You can see that I'm logged out right now because it's showing me the login, create user information. I press login. I type, again, let's do something incorrect. Get username and password incorrect up here. Type Haxor1337, press login. And now everything's logged in. I have these cookies created. It has my username and password information. Up here, it's showing me in the that I'm logged in because it has the login menu up here. Up at the top, notice I'm on the login route. And next, I'm going to click on the home button right here, taking me back to the root route. And back on the root route and log in, create user. It's showing that I am not correctly logged in for some reason, that I have my password and username down here. Come back over here, my username, Haxor, password 1337. Let's see, we have to figure out why this is not logging me in correctly. I'm going to print good credentials equals good credentials, like that. Save that, come down here, make sure that that's getting a true value that I think it should. Come back over here, refresh this. We have, again, this information over here being sent back to the server. We know that information is being sent to Flask because over here in my debug information, I can see what the cookies are set in Firefox. So Haxor1337, it is telling me, in fact, the good credentials are true. So logged in here should be equal to true. So let's come back over to base.html, if logged in. So if that's true, then that should display. I'm over here. Oh, and it is in fact actually displaying that. Create message, log out. If I delete these cookies, delete, refresh this web page. Now it's showing me the logged out information. Press log in, come back over here, Haxor1337. Now it's showing me the logged in information. Back over to the home, the login information, and so on. Covered a lot of stuff in the last 10 minutes or so. We'll have a class on Wednesday to sort of clean up that discussion, flesh it out just a little bit more. But that really is everything that you need to do everything on the project. And so yeah, that's where we'll out of time. So we'll stop today. If again, if you're having error messages or your code's not exactly doing what mine's doing, I'm happy to answer those right after class here. Or again, the video and all the code will be posted online, so you can review that as convenient for you.
Back to the project out to, yeah.
Yeah, let me.